that's just to say, we want to thank you for coming on Sustainability Marketing Survivors Conversations. And I just remembered, probably about a year ago, we were introduced via a mutual connection. And just by chance, we ended up sitting on the same table and talking about what we were doing. Can you share a bit about your sustainability journey as you shared with me on that day?
Yeah, so the best way to describe it is I'm just going to start from the very beginning about
Oynk
are, what we do, and how we ended up building the tools that we did. So Oynk started off as a creative agency in August 2024, but we did like low carbon and basically it was optimized design. So not really low carbon, but low carbon was a byproduct of the optimizations. Then I started getting more into building websites for people, and they became lightweight as well, because it was just, I can explain all that later on how we got into that, but naturally everything that we build has always been optimized for performance and emissions and speed and everything else, so no one wants a clunky website. So naturally we kind of fell into the digital sustainability sort of sector, and then I thought, we're doing really good work here, let's build some tools which will support that. And then that's where EcoPigs came from. So there are other tools out there like Website Carbon and EcoGrader, and these tools will give you your sort of overall performance metrics and the emissions of your website. So if you wanted to find out what the emissions of your website were about a year ago, you'd go on the internet, 99 times out of 10, you'd end up on websitecarbon.com. You'd enter your website email, website address, and then from there, they would give you a grade and an estimated emission for that web page that you've entered. So I saw that and I was like, I want something like this that I can give to my clients so they can see what their emissions are, and then we can decide if we need to repair anything or whatever. So I started building that. So I started building EcoPigs at the end of 2024. By March, I'd had a version that I was able to take with me to the business exhibition at Wicksteed Park, where people would enter their URL and email address, and they'd receive a PDF which said your homepage emissions are X. This is the equivalent to boiling a kettle this many times. This many trees takes this long to sequester the CO2, or a fun metric which was, it's like driving 5 pigs X amount of miles in a diesel vehicle. So we had some bits like that, and then it had a couple of little bits at the bottom saying things that we suggest you can do to reduce that would be this, this, and this. I looked at that and thought, we're only ever telling people what the homepage is, and everyone else is only ever telling people what the homepage is. But if you click through to other pages, and most people, when they go on a website, they click through to other pages. Those pages also have emissions. So I decided I need to fix this. This isn't good enough. So by May, so that was in March, I had the expo. So by May, I had a V2 of EcoPigs, which was a dashboard where you could monitor your entire website's emissions from the homepage, even as far as the cookies and policies that you've got. You can monitor all of that with a bit of live visitor tracking. If you put a pixel on your page, it would map where someone's journey was and what the emissions were for that. And that's how it basically started. So when I first met you, that was the stage I was at.
So cool.
And a lot of people are like, I didn't know websites had emissions and these sort of things. So I was educating people at the same time, saying, well, obviously there's a data center there, there's a device at this end, and there's obviously data transfer and all of that, which causes emissions. And then the data center is powered by somewhere, which it, again, depending on the grid that they're using, that also has emissions. So there's several sections towards a website having emissions that people just don't make the connection. But so that's where, when I first met you, where I was up to V1. We've definitely evolved way beyond that now, and that goes not only for the dashboard itself, but the actual API that we use. Because V1, when I built it, we did still rely on the sustainable web design models methodology. And then, as we're going to get into later on, I ended up looking more and more into that. And my first thought was protection. If that ever goes down, or that's ever classed as wrong, am I wrong? I need to get my own methodology. So I started understanding the science behind it all and built my own methodology into that. So that's where we're at now. So most people use the sustainable web design model with the CO2.js plugin, and everyone sort of agrees that this is the right thing, whereas I'm over here saying it's not.
I love that. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I basically say agreement isn't accuracy. It's just a bunch of people have all gone, that will do. So so
was it as you were developing it then you had this sort of dissatisfaction in terms of what you were seeing? Because I know you started off and you said you wanted to get something similar for your own practice.
Yes,
but it became a lot more than that for you, didn't it?
It became an obsession.
Yeah.
Because it basically powers everything I do. So at Oynk, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is visibility and clarity around everything we do. So the people who build green websites, traditionally, and I've seen it across the board, they've always relied on website carbon as the metric. So when they've built a website for their client, they'll be like, here's your website, we've ran it on this tool and it's giving you an A. And that person's gone off happy with an A, but they haven't explained it's only an A on your homepage, not every other page.
Yeah, wow.
And what they also haven't done is they've said that is likely to change. And it will change based on the user who has the website, their behavior. So a lot of those companies will build WordPress websites for their clients. Their clients will take that and they will start tweaking it over like a year or so, adding little bits in, whether it's blogs or I've just recorded this great video with this company, I'm going to put that in. Actually, I really want a background video which plays immediately because it looks amazing when someone lands on my site. What you'll notice is, as the user who doesn't know how to optimize their website, amends a website, it just gets dirtier again. So without a specialist on hand to monitor that and realize, okay, your website's getting dirty again, I've sold you something that my reputation now on my website says it is an A, it's now a C, they're no longer in the loop to keep it clean. So that's why EcoPigs was important to me, that any website I built for my clients, I was able to monitor and track weekly, daily if I wanted, or monthly, any changes, and then I can flag it and say, I've noticed that your website shot up here. Can we have a look and maybe address that? So that's why it was important for me to build my own methodology, because the system and the tools that I built originally, obviously I was happy with, but then I thought about, okay, I'm doing this better than what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
If they've not done this, what else haven't they done in their own methodology? And then it became like, oh my God, they're missing a trick here, or this is wrong. And one of the first things that really threw me off was all of them use a global kilowatt hour average for the energy grid.
Okay.
So they all use 475 kilowatt hours. And then what they do is they will, if you have green hosting, they will reduce that by around 80% to say, well, you're green hosted, that means you're probably a lot cleaner than what the global grid is. Here's your score, and it's a rough estimate. What I'd found when I was doing my own methodology was, when I built into EcoPigs, we now have live data from 28 different countries' grids.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, so that updates every 15 minutes as well. So it's constant. So you'll see on the Oynk website, there's a little pig badge in the bottom corner, and that will fluctuate. You'll see my website's emissions actually go up and down. It will say 1 minute it might be 0.07 grams, but later on in the day, when it's cleaner energy and the grid's cleaner, it will go down to about 0.03. So that was important to me to have that. So now, instead of me relying on 475 kilowatt hours across the grid, I'm now able to look at everything from a point of view of let's understand not only the live grid, but where it's based also makes a massive difference. So this is where I started getting into I call it subconscious greenwashing.
Okay.
And
another new term for me, but that's really good. I love the subconscious.
Yeah, I call it subconscious greenwashing because companies don't know they're doing it.
That's crucial. That's really key.
It is. It's not as drastic as it sounds because it's something that people don't understand, but it is, again, like I said, subconscious greenwashing. So what I mean by subconscious greenwashing in the digital sustainability space is, let's say there's two companies that do the exact same thing. One's website is hosted in Sweden, and the other one is hosted in a country I love, Poland. Now, Sweden has around 80% of its energy is renewable from hydro. Poland is still very, very much reliant on coal. However, if both of those companies that are hosting the websites claim that they are green hosted companies, the Green Web Foundation and the Sustainable Web Design Model and all of the other tools that I've mentioned today, they will all equalize those two. So they'll say, okay, you both use green web hosting, you're both going to get the same reduction. Which for me was a problem.
Yeah.
Because I argue the fact that the Sweden company with its 15 kilowatt hours energy, super low, and they're definitely using renewable, that's fine. They're not propping their own website up with RECs and guarantees of origin and all these other sort of forms that you can get. Whereas the other company in Poland will probably just be paying for certificates, which are the RECs and the guarantees of origin. And they're basically saying, although our service is dirty, we've paid to offset that. Now, my argument here was the grid that energy is going into doesn't understand a certificate. The planet doesn't understand a certificate. So the energy that your website is still being powered by is still dirty. So that's why I started building my own methodology, because
that's really good.
Instead of everyone being weighted, so you've got a dirty company here that pays to offset their dirt versus a company that's clean.
Yeah.
I argue now that these two aren't the same. One really is clean and one isn't. So why should both of them get treated the same when you get a score? So on mine, no matter what the hosting company is paying someone else, if the energy on their national grid that they're sending to your website is 600 or 800 kilowatt hours, that's what it will be measured against. Because for me, a certificate doesn't change the planet. It really doesn't.
That's really good. Yeah.
That's the depth that I've gone into, and it's like I said, it's spiraled out into a bit of an obsession.
That's amazing. I hadn't realised that hosting companies would I don't know how to describe it, but be that. I don't want to say devious, but almost devious to say, this is a green server on the fact that we're actually offsetting. We're not making any of the energy coming into it green. We're actually paying for trees to be planted or whatever the offsetting project is. But I hadn't realised that was a thing.
Yeah, so that's quite a widespread thing. There's not many hosting companies that are truly ran on renewable energy.
Okay.
There's a few. There's a couple in the UK that are, but the majority are basically offsetting. And then they're claiming, there's a prominent one. I don't want to name any names.
No, that's fine.
A prominent one that basically says we are 300% green because they're basically buying 300% of the amount of certificates. And it's like,
oh gosh,
that's great that you're investing into the infrastructure and are supporting 100%.
Yeah.
But the energy that's still being transferred to the user's website, that electron does not care how it was generated. It ends up in a pot in the national grid being mixed with whatever else we're pulling it in from, whether it's 57% nuclear from France, there might be a bit of coal in there and a bit of fossil fuel, a bit of wind, and there's such a mix in the soup of the national grid, which is what powers everything. That's what's important for me. So you can claim that your website is hosted green, but by the time it hits the national grid and hits you, it's got dirty again. And that's just the way it is. And the way I look at it, you have to be honest when it comes to sustainability. There's no shortcuts. And a piece of paper is not going to change the emissions that hits the sky. So that's why I obsess and dig.
So 2 learning things for me that has blown my mind today. One is that the traditional tools that are out there, we're only analysing the homepage and not the whole website. The second is what we've just been talking about, which is about the whole thing about hosting companies actually offsetting rather than cleaning up the energy coming in to their servers. Were there any other things that you discovered as you were developing EcoPigs?
Yeah, so one of the things was, again, more against the tools that already existed. So a really good example, and it makes life easier for me to explain it this way, is they don't understand, and their tool doesn't differentiate between what a certain weighted or different weighted objects do. So you could have a 2 megabyte image and a 2 megabyte piece of JavaScript, and their tool will see 2 megabytes and 2 megabytes. They weigh the same, therefore their emissions are the same. But that doesn't work that way, not in the world that we live in. So the way that I ended up fixing my tool was an image will load in a second, like in a flash, because it's just a static thing. It requires no compute. It's download, show. A JavaScript has an action and a compute, so it requires more energy. Even though they might weigh the same, this one might load in 0.5 of a second, but this might take 2 or 3 seconds to load. And that's throughout the website as well. So that's where EcoPigs really sort of stands out, is it measures compute and energy usage of that website as it goes through it, rather than saying, well, this is this, this is this, this is this, this is this. They weigh that, therefore it's this much. So what that genuinely means is a lot of those tools have been really overstating people's emissions on their websites.
Yeah.
So luckily, websites aren't as bad as overstating buying in loads of steel, for instance. Like that would obviously mean any taxes that you pay to try and offset those, you'll be paying loads more money. But websites themselves, I say these are the front door to your business. If I coined a term called the integrity proxy, there's a white paper on the Oynk website which talks about this. And what it is for me is it basically says if your homepage or your website is the front door to your business, if someone wants to know about what you do, they go to your website before they do anything else, because the website's non-committal. They'll go to your website, they'll read about you. If you make claims that you want to do great for the planet and you care about the environment and you look after people with disabilities or anything like that, but your website doesn't meet the WCAG 2.2 AA standards, which is a minimum for accessibility, and your emissions are terrible, then for me, that's why I coined the integrity proxy. It's almost like, how can we trust any more of those claims going forwards if your own website, where we go to find out about you, isn't even accurate? How can we trust anything else that you tell us?
Yeah.
So for me, it's about showing them there at this point, we care, and this is why. So when Oynk now builds a website, we build it with 100% clarity. So every single claim that we put on your websites, even if we say this website meets accessibility 2.2 AAA or its emissions are X, you get the little pig thing that you've seen on Oynk that you can click and it will take you to a EcoPigs page, and it tells you there on the page what it is, and everything's got a report attached to it for proof that we care about what we do, to the point that we will give you real visibility.
That's fantastic.
And again, as far as EcoPigs goes, I've written our entire methodology there as well. So if people want to know how do these guys actually figure this stuff out, it's there, it's transparent. We don't want to hide behind it. And I've had people say, well, aren't you worried that someone's going to come along and steal what you've done? They can try, but there's a lot more behind the scenes with how it works and the learning than a methodology. Like, you could give me and Gordon Ramsay the same ingredients, but I promise you his food tastes better than mine. So it's basically that, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a really good point you made a few minutes ago about the integrity of a business. I remember probably about 10 years ago now, I was consulting with lots of different companies, and I was horrified to see you remember the changeover from HTTP to HTTPS, and the number of websites, lots in the financial sector, not having any financial transactions on them, but promoting as accountants or consultants or whatever it was, didn't go for that HTTPS. And I said, before you even look at your website, get that sorted, because as soon as I hover over it, it's saying not secure. I love the way that actually that it's more than that. It's about the disability access to the website as well, but then also the emissions in particular. Are you thinking ahead of what's the sort of what next for marketers? Because one of the questions, I suppose, is where you're really helping at the moment is within scope 3. So people reporting against scope 3, but reporting to an accuracy level they haven't had the opportunity to before. What are your thoughts, if you've got any, around how do marketers move beyond compliance, move beyond the right? We've done this. We've got the badge. We've been EcoPIC certified. We've got the disability credentials on our website as well. How do they move beyond that? Do you think?
I don't think it's about moving beyond. I think it's about maintaining and keeping up with it. So I got into doing this sort of stuff because it felt right. I could have made way more money doing normal stuff and not focusing on sustainability stuff, because some people do get turned off by it. You know, I've gone into businesses and they've said, why should I have a sustainable website? We don't care. And it's like you try and make the point, but because they've heard the word sustainability, they're immediately not interested. So it's about making people understand that it's an ongoing job. It's not something that you just do once and you leave it. And that's the same with marketers, or no matter what you're doing, it's about continually making sure that you are doing good for your users and the planet, because sustainability has to include humans as well. So does your website allow people to come on and see it? Like, if they don't, then you're losing people. You know, it doesn't matter what you're doing, you're losing people. So yeah, that's one of the things that was important for me. And some things happened recently that sort of backs all that up and gives it validation, which is B Corp. So B Corps now have moved to V2 of their model. And inside V2 is a small section called JEDI, which is Justice, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. So this is all about accessibility now. And if you're a new company, you have to complete 2 of these modules. If you're an existing company, you need to complete 3. So inside that is your website and the accessibility that your website has, which is brilliant for me, because now everything that I've been building is now sort of a requirement, whereas before people were like, I don't need it, I don't care. But now it's like, okay, we actually need their help, because these are the guys who have built these tools and they've got them in place where they can really audit our website and tell us if we're slacking anywhere. And I built a tool called Peer. You may have seen me talk about it before, which is performance, emissions, experience and ranking. And that's everything I build a website to has to score highly on all 4 of those pillars. Because before, when I was talking to people about a sustainable website, they didn't really care. Now, if I talk to them about a website that performs really quickly, it has accessibility, so the experience, the rankings in there, so you'll rank higher on Google because your website has lower emissions. People now go, oh, okay, I'm interested. My website's going to be faster, which reduces my bounce rate. So if I'm spending money on Google Ads and my website speed is less than a second, I've got 0% potential bounce rate from a page taking too long to load. And Google did a study on that, and they found that for every second, you lose around 7% of all your traffic. So if you're paying for Google Ads and your website takes 3 seconds to load, although for us sitting here 3 seconds might feel like, oh, it's not that bad, 21% of their customers, up to 25% of their potential customers.
Goodness, yeah.
So you're paying for those people to leave. So understanding that and having a website that performs really quickly, has super low emissions, cares about everybody who's going to come to it, and also make sure that it's going to rank high as well on Google organically, because that's another saving. I built that. So every single website you build gets measured against those. You get a report that can be put on your website as a page if you need it. It's whatever, it's there. People can see the level of detail and the care that you've gone into your website. So when it comes back to my integrity proxy conversation, it's all there. Like, we say this, it was clarified here. Here's the entire report. Check it out. We care about what we do. And then since then, I've now added in the Jedi metrics from the B Corp. So now I measure all of those things as well. So it goes into like a Flesch Kincaid copy reading and gives you a grade on the age that someone can read the content on your website with. So what age is it based on? And if you want to get AAA, you need to basically make your content on your website reach an age of 10 and under. So it's very difficult to get. So I'm working with a B Corp now, and I'm helping them have a new website, and they really want AAA. And we're having to really go back and forth with the content because they're saying, this doesn't sound like me, I want this word in. And even a word such as positive had to be taken out for it to pass because it's too many syllables. Like things like that you have to really consider. Like you can have it in, but you have to make concessions elsewhere, and that was an easier place to take it out. So instead of it saying make a positive change, we've put make a real change. So it's easier for someone to read. And then you go through and like we originally changed a few of the words from like business to firm, but they really didn't like that. So we've had to go back to business and then take out some other words and shorten certain sentences so they weren't too intricate. And these are the sort of levels that you go into. And now if you want to become a B Corp, that's a legal requirement. You can't have a website that doesn't allow for someone with at least, we have to reach AA standard, but I always try and aim for AAA. But
it's amazing.
Yeah, and then it talks about color ratios as well. So AA is 4.5 to 1 ratio, AAA is 7 to 1 ratio. So even on my own website on Oynk, I wanted to go for AAA, which means my normal yellow and white and black branding, I've had to sort of find a way to rework that in now because I can't have any text that's yellow and white because the ratio doesn't meet. So even for my own self, I'm basically eating my own dog food, basically. Like I'm looking at it and saying, I can't say you do this and then I'm not going to do it myself. I'm 100%, I have to figure this out for my own self and then do the same for my clients. And yeah, it's definitely a challenge. It makes websites a lot more expensive. But when you look at it from a social point of view, and I'm someone who's got autism and ADHD, so I'm quite fortunate that I'm classed as highly functioning, but I also understand that there are people out there who can't spend as much time reading a website. It will just bore them to death. Like they just don't have the capacity for that. These are the people we really have to sort of help get them into the workplace. But when they're in the workplace, can they read the content that's on websites? Can they read the content that's on your intranet? Are your PDFs working for them? And what about the emails and the way that you're structuring emails and sending out company-wide emails? Are you excluding them at that point? So Jedi goes into detail about all of those things. And it's something that I'm passionate about, being someone who's classed as disabled, is helping other people who are disabled. I'm in a position to help build a structure and a framework that will support them in the future. So with the sustainability stuff and the accessibility stuff, that's really where Oynk is sort of overpowered, and we do things that I don't think any other agency really does or cares about to the level that we do it. So powered by EcoPigs, with all of the stuff we've got with live emissions and clarity, and then all of the sustainability and accessibility stuff. Yeah, it's quite an offer we've got. But yeah, it feels like it's meaningful work.
Yeah, definitely. I think what I love about what you've just been describing is that for me, if you say sustainability, there is the issue of the translation of that to some people is around emissions. It's carbon myopia, we call it, or carbon tunnel vision. So that they're completely focused on that. And what you've been doing is saying, well, actually, sustainability is a lot more than just emissions. We're pretty good at working out your emissions on your website, but what about the social aspects of sustainability as well? How do you engage with your communities in a meaningful way where they can actually read what's on your website and understand it? I think I love that. I suppose it was part of my question about going beyond the almost like the tick list mentality, and you are thinking about the individual who's accessing that website, not just is this right in terms of a framework or a standard, and can we get the grade, which is important, but actually at the end of the day we're dealing with people who need to access that content and learn from that content and read that content. So I really applaud you on what you're doing there.
Yeah, no, it is, like I said, it is valuable work. For me, it's, like I said to you earlier, I could have easily just sacked all that off and just made a ton more money, not caring, but there's like a moral piece inside where I just have to help other people. And whether that's a good example of that is every tool I've ever built, there's always a free version.
Brilliant.
Because accessibility, I feel like a lot of people, a lot of companies are priced out of being able to do the right thing. So most people only have one website. EcoPigs, you can scan and monitor one website for the rest of your life for free. I've got, obviously since we last met in person, I've built a tool called noisome.com, and that's emission backwards, and that's a carbon accounting tool. So that's where you can measure your scope 1, 2, and 3s. Yeah. That's free if you only want to measure your scope 1 and 2s, and you just want to understand or get into building or like your carbon reduction plans and stuff like that. If you have the paid version, you can get a carbon reduction plan built in for free. You just press a button. AI generates most of it for you. And I've built that to be super easy to understand. So I've tried a lot of different tools, and I found that when you go into these tools, you're inundated with questions that are just not relevant to you and your business, and it becomes overwhelming real quick. Like, have you used refrigerant gases? Have you done any bio energy and stuff? I'm not sitting there like, I just sit in a shared office, mate. I don't even pay for my electricity. I'm getting overwhelmed. I don't want to do this. And I've now built a tool that it asks you the relevant questions first before you fill out the stuff that's relevant to you. So it strips away anything that is not relevant to you and your business. Great. So you put in shared office, immediately there's no scope 1 and 2s for you really, because you don't, unless you've got a fleet, there's no electricity, gas, water to pay. So that's irrelevant. And then, like I said, if you're a creative agency like mine, you don't have a fleet. You've got a car that you drive to work, and that's in your scope 3s anyway. So then it helps you really sort of nail down and focus on, these are the areas that you need to report on because these are your emissions areas. Everybody's got scope 3 emissions, and it comes back to my terminology earlier on, subconscious greenwashing, where we've had big companies who are being forced to do scope 1 and 2s forever. Every company in the world has scope 3s that we could all improve on, but they've never been required. And it's like, you've just barely touched the tip of the iceberg with scope 1 and 2. Scope 3 is 90% of all of our emissions. We've been playing these games, and companies have been saying that they're green and sustainable. Look at our report. Here's our scope 1 and 2 emissions. We've plugged in 10 million LEDs now, and this stuff, and it's like, okay, so you're ignoring Jevon's paradox here, because now you're using more electricity to power all of these LEDs than you were before. But let's not get into that.
No.
There's a million things that people were just doing that didn't make sense to me, and I was like, okay, let's strip it all back and make something that's easy for people to understand. So that's free. And then I built another tool which looks at code health. So when people are building tools like EcoPigs, how can I make sure that EcoPigs as a tool was energy efficient? So I had to build a tool myself that I called Swinks. And Swinks basically looks at the tools you're building and the code bases that you're operating in. Is completely air gapped offline, so none of your data gets spread anywhere in the world. And it looks at your code and tells you what the tool that you're building, what the emissions are, if there's any dead code in it, if there's any bloat, if you've got stuff in it which can be optimized, if there's stuff in it that this is a security issue, get rid of that. It does all that. Again, there's free versions of that. So everything I do is about helping people get access to doing better things. And it's, again, that goes back into the social aspect of stuff. And I've got another exciting project coming up, which comes off the back of the Jedi stuff. So part of Jedi requires your website to be tested by people with real living disabilities.
Okay.
So you cannot get your B Corp until you've had that signed off. So I've got a good friend of mine, Tom Cliff, who runs Cafe Track, which help autistic people get into the workplace. And as an autistic person myself, it means a lot to me that someone like Tom is out there doing this sort of level work. I spoke to Tom and I said, this is missing, and there's a real opportunity for us here to help people who can't go and work in a normal workplace to be able to do a meaningful job and make meaningful money off the bat. So we're going to create something called Oynk SE, which is Oynk Social Enterprise.
Oh, fantastic.
And when people are applying for their B Corp and they go through and they speak to like a consultant, like my friend Alexina, you've probably heard of Alexina Cassidy.
Yeah.
These people will say, well, you're doing this, you need to have your website tested. I know a guy who can do that. They will test your website. But now, after speaking with Tom, who runs this cafe, he's like, I already know loads of people who would do this type of work. So we're going to get some testers, people with real disabilities, to go through the dashboard that I've created for them. And it will say, on this website, can you go from the home page and get through to the contact us page really easily? And then they'll be able to test these things and say, do you know what? Although your thing scored that as, yeah, that's fine, I struggled. I couldn't press tab through to get through to it. That wasn't right. Or it took too long for me to contact you. These are the sort of things that the feedback they'll bring back, and then we can really amend the website to do that. Now, it's going to charge quite a bit because we're trying to give these people real money, and I'm talking a minimum of £200 per tester per test. So not even a day. They could do 5 tests in a day and make £1,000, which is life-changing for these guys.
Yeah,
you know, they might not want to do 5 tests a day. They might want to do 5 tests a month. But it's given them an opportunity, people who were just ignored and on the sidelines, to A, get experience in a job where they're not currently getting, and B, they're also earning money to give themselves a little bit of financial freedom, whether that's 1 day a week, 2 days a week, or they might want to work 1 day a month. It doesn't matter to me. They're not going to be hounded and you need to work on this day. It's not going to be that way. They'll just get paid for when they want to be paid, and the work's not difficult. So that's where that comes in, and it's like a circular economy, effectively, of you do this, we will do that test, we will then do the reporting and the audit, we will then send it off to those guys, they will then feed us back, you will get qualified feedback from someone with this disability, this disability, and this disability, and then we will fix those. They will test it again for you, and then we will send it back, and then you can get the thumbs up to say this is perfect. I can now go to B Corp and say I've had this done, here's the documents, and B Corp will be happy with that because it's happened. Like, you've had the website checked for accessibility, it's then being checked by people with the disabilities, and then it's gone back and they've confirmed that they're happy with the changes, and it's helping people who are disadvantaged have a chance at life. And one of the things I was talking about with Tom was, it's not just these people who are just going to sit there and do this forever. There might be people who are closer to me on the spectrum, but are struggling to get into a workplace or into a job because they've not been able to build up any sort of experience over the last 4 or 5 years. This might be a chance for them to do this sort of work. And then through Oynk, I might be able to employ these people and say, look, come and do some code work with us. Like, you're clearly good at it. Come and work in with us. You can work remotely if you need to. Come in. If it's completely up to them. We're completely flexible. And yeah, that again stems into the ecosystem of what Oynk has sort of grown into over the last 18 months.
That is absolutely awesome. I'm blown away by another thing that you shared, to be honest. Just to close, I think we're sort of coming up to time now, but you mentioned you're actually within your sort of heart of sharing stuff and then getting stuff out there. You're actually writing a book as well. Can you say a bit more about that?
The book is basically, it's called Dirty by Design. The book's written, but I'm putting it out on Substack. So every month I will drop a chapter for free. You can sign up and probably get chapters earlier or something if that's what people want. But the main reason if people did sign up is so they can talk to me about their thoughts and feelings about that chapter, and then I might need to go back into the book and edit a few pages and add things in. So I want it to be more of a community sort of thing. But yeah, so Dirty by Design is basically my story of how I started in designing optimized products to building eco pigs to now being a sort of antagonist against the Green Web Foundation and the way that the website carbon and the sustainable web design model works, and the way that they've had 10 years to fix it but they never have, and everything's just based on assumptions and not fact. There's no science behind it, whereas I talk about how I got there, who I am as a person, why I care so much about building it, and why I'm so now at this stage in my career going for people, not in a malicious way, but it's about, let's raise the bar here, let's change the standards, we're going to build a framework and people are going to follow this framework, and it's just going to change the way that websites and everything are built and measured going forwards, instead of just relying on poor assumptions, which people have done for the last 10 years. So that's why it's called Dirty by Design, because designers like myself have just been designing what they believe was good, but the tools they're using were not helpful at all, really. Yeah. So, I mean, I am quite fair in the book. I do say they created something when something needed creating, and it was there when companies like what I do were starting out and needed a reference point. But it kind of got to a point where if you've only managed to get to this point in 10 years and in 18 months, I've hammered what you've done. Did you care? Or was it again another subconscious greenwashing? Because if you came out and said, you know what, we've been wrong by this much this entire time, how much effect does that have on their reputation? So they're in a hard place, unfortunately, but it takes someone like me to find a method and then challenge them openly by being transparent on my website with my methods, where everything is there, it's defensible. If you want to argue with me about it, go on the page, find what you don't like, come to me, and I'll talk to you about every single metric that's on there and why my method's correct.
Fantastic. So yeah, huge thanks for your time and all the incredible insight, and it's also encouraging to hear the work that you're doing for people on the planet in particular, and how you're helping marketing professionals navigate this whole area, which is just so confusing and so time consuming as well. Thank you so much, and thank you for being on Sustainability Marketing Survival Conversations.
No, it was a pleasure.